Hey Reed, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your time to sit down here with me and discuss this important subject. I got this new job in the University of Florida where I need to work directly with commercial beekeepers. My day by day is a very applied research program, so it's been very interesting to travel all over the state and practically living with commercial beekeepers. So I'm able to talk with the crew, see details, be there, and have a full understanding of the problem they might have. And one of the constant questions they come to me and say, how about pesticides, Umberto? What do you think about pesticides? Why not to call Reed and ask him myself? And we can have a little chat, and maybe the people at home can, take some advantage of this conversation and jump and ask questions maybe in the comment section below, and let's see how it goes. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for calling me up, Umberto. I'm always happy to talk about pesticides and the complexities and whether it can explain the problems beekeepers are having or not is, I guess, the whole point of my research. That's really what I want to understand is what role do pesticides play in the problems beekeepers are having? And that's really what drives a lot of my research program. So hopefully I can answer some questions. That's the goal anyway. We're not there yet. There's still a lot of unknown out there, but I think, with some experiments we can answer some questions.
So let me see if I can start as a guy that never worked with pesticide before, but I read a lot and I know the biases from every single place. Let's start with the first one that I think is very broad, and feel free to go whatever direction we want to go with that. Is pesticides a problem or not in beekeeping?
That's a very broad question.
I know.
That's the problem. Is pesticides? That's a huge term. That's like saying, because there's so many different kinds of pesticides out there. There are insecticides, which is a kind of pesticide, and insecticides can definitely be a problem if they're misapplied, because insecticides are designed to kill insects, and honeybees will be taken out with them as well. And areas where insecticides are being misapplied, definitely that can be a very, very serious problem. Other pesticides, fungicides, another pesticide, herbicides, these are not designed to kill insects, so any harm they do to bees is not going to be through the mode of action that they were developed. It's going to be through some other mechanism that they're harming bees, because they're not designed to kill insects. And I think that's where things get really complicated is, there's a lot of different things going on out there, and which ones are the real bad actors. And in some cases, it's the human element, people applying things when they maybe shouldn't be, and that's also where bees can get into trouble. So there's really two angles here. The application of insecticides that we know are harmful to bees when they shouldn't be. And the second one is these other things that we don't know are necessarily harmful to bees, and they're applied when bees are present, and there's really no restriction on fungicide and herbicide application with regard to protecting bees from exposure. So those are the two angles, and it's a complex topic because there's a lot of different things going on out there, and there's a lot of different crops and a lot of different people making those applications.
One thing that I noticed traveling all over Florida, not only Florida, I visit a lot of beekeepers in the United States, and one thing I see is a constant is that they test everything in-house. They try to find all kinds of solutions themselves, by feeding, by applying. There is no restriction at all. I think that's a big problem. Another variable that are put in the whole situation. You have all the sprays they might have around. They might have problems with, for example, in an almond crops they're exposed to many different things. And when beekeepers, for example, start to test things by themselves in-house, in combination with these other pesticides, herbicides, fungicides that are around, that might create problems.
Well, it could be. I mean, that's been kind of beekeepers using different pesticides in the hive for various reasons in an off-label manner, where they haven't been rigorously tested and they haven't been approved by EPA. It can be a problem, particularly, as you say, in combination with all the other things that they are exposed to. I mean, I did some work when I was a postdoc at Nebraska, looking at the potential for interaction between the miticides and all the other things that these miticides in combination with fungicides, miticides in combination with antibiotics. And we found, I mean, the most striking combination that caused the greatest increase in bee death was a miticide mixed with a fungicide. And it was, how that happened. I mean, we got a pretty good idea what the molecular basis behind that is, the cytochrome P450s, but it just to show you that things can crop up when you don't expect them.
Yeah, I think I made a video about that. If people at home want to know more about those numbers, I think the main combination you're talking about is taufluvalinate with prochlorox. That was
or anything in that's a broad class of fungicides.
Okay.
The azole fungicides, the propiconazole, myclobutanil. There's a whole bunch of them.
Okay, I will leave a link here in the corner so you guys can see the video and get more information about that specific paper. So if that interaction, the synergistic effect of pesticides is a reality, is a fact, you already demonstrate that. And the introduction of new things every single time. For example, beekeepers try everything. There is other pest fungicides being approved all the time, many different levels in almond applications or mosquito controlling, and there is it's unbelievable the amount of things that we are exposed and we don't even know. Now they start to work to read those things. I'm freaking out. I get everything and I think about exposure.
It is a moving target. I mean, for me, I call that job security because I'm not going to run out of things to test. I mean, there's constantly new things coming down the pipeline that need to be understood. I guess the one thing that might put me out of business is that as new products are developed now, there is a lot more honeybee testing for new pesticides that come to market than there ever was even 10 years ago. I mean, they are doing larval rearing tests to test effects on larvae. They're doing chronic tests to see if there's effects on bees over 10 days. They're doing, and often based on those results, they end up doing whole colony studies in tents where they tent the bees and spray a crop under that tent and try to see if there's actually any negative effect in a colony. So there's, I mean, a vastly increased investment in bee testing over just 10 years ago. The one thing they are not testing for, however, is these interactions, because no place in the world do they actually test for interactions between different pesticides in bees. And I think the reason for that is that there's just too many things to test. I mean, where would you stop? You could be testing for decades before you finally got the pesticide registered if you tested all the different potential combinations. But I think there are opportunities to test particular combinations, especially with those fungicides that we identified interacted with fluvalinates, which is an apistan. The same fungicides interact with Altacor or chlorantraniliprole when they're applied to almonds during bloom. So I think that's an area where we've identified a class of fungicides that has a high interactive potential. And I think looking for interactions where we've seen a group that is likely to interact before, I think that would be a more reasonable way to begin testing interactions. And actually, I think Bayer did that with one of their newer products. Savanto, I believe, they actually did test with that group of fungicides, and then they found an effect. And it actually ended up in a guideline on the label not to mix with that group of fungicides because of the potential for bee toxicity.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting that Bear took that step forward on that direction. But how that helps? You don't have control in the surroundings.
Well, it will prevent a tank mix from occurring, and I think that's where the most danger is with these synergistic interactions. Is when you're putting two things together and we know they're going to interact and cause problems for the bees. It's true, the bees will pick up an insecticide from one field and may pick up the synergizing fungicide from another field. And when they get those back to the colony, those will mix together and interact. But I think, that's going to be almost impossible to get our hands around. I think it's just the greatest danger is going to be in that tank mix. And I think if we can prevent that from occurring, I think that goes a long way towards protecting bees in a reasonable way that we can actually begin to make recommendations and to change the language on the label to prohibit people from doing that.
So moving for not only honeybees, but I see a lot of articles out there showing massive amount of not only bees but all pollinators or insects die off, and 80-90% of the mass of the insects apparently is going away. Do you believe that's something related with this synergistic effects and things that we cannot control on that? I know I am pushing here.
It's a tough question. It's tough to nail it down, even what's going on with honeybees. If
I know
pesticides are there's more people watching that particular insect, honeybees, than there is any other insect that's out there.
It is tough, and I wanted to discuss this. Like, I start to doubt if the scientific method can help here. But for example, in your case, the synergistic effect. If we get a combination, I don't know, we have 100 pesticides out there, or if you have that in combination of 5, we have 75 million possible combinations. So it's impossible.
It is, and I think that's where you need to take a step back and you need to try to simplify and try to find simpler tests, reduce the number of pesticides you're looking at so that you can get through more of them, more relevant combinations quickly. And that's what we did with the recent study we did in almonds. Is we looked to see what are the most used pesticides in that scenario, and those are the ones we tested, are the ones that are most widely used. We tested 3 insecticides and 3 fungicides. They were the top products in those categories that were being applied. And so we recognize we can't do everything, and we did some pretty basic tests. They were tests on individual bees in a laboratory setting. We did it with larval rearing in that case, where we tested it on the larvae, but we also did it in adults. It's just a matter of trying to break the problem down so that you can actually, maybe you can't solve everything, but maybe you can solve this one little chunk of it and say, well, there appears to be a problem here, or maybe there doesn't appear to be a problem here. Maybe that combination is fine. For lack of any evidence to the contrary, that combination does not appear to be causing a problem. And we can just start to chip away at it that way. And it is a daunting task, though. I don't think it's the scientific method that is insufficient for answering the question here. It's more the resources available just don't match the scale of the problem.
Yeah, it's scale-wise. Yeah, I'm talking about
it's
scale.
Just a hugely complex. And this is true of all bee research. I think you worked in viruses for many years, and that's a really big problem as well.
Yeah.
But in human research on human viruses, there's this massive, many hundreds or thousands of people working on maybe even one virus. But in bees, the number of people attacking this problem is just vastly fewer, and it's just a lot more difficult to make progress because we don't have the the scale and the resources to really answer them the way they do in human medicine or even in other mammals.
That's interesting. Fair enough. Yeah, that's true. We don't have. It's about scale, I guess. It's about scale.
But I wish. We do take the shortcuts that we can, where we can simplify things we can to try to generate useful information that people can use to protect bees as quickly as we can. But we're never going to be able to test everything, that's for sure.
Yeah, so some beekeepers come to me. Is it a way to simplify things like Europe have done to just to ban some of them? What do you think about?
I think that's that's attractive in many ways, because it would seem to solve the problem, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are almost certain to be unintended consequences there. And I think it comes down to the fact that a particular pesticide, the neonicotinoids, are the ones that were banned in Europe.
Yes.
I think in every use scenario, they're not necessarily causing a problem. Like I know in Canada that pollinate the canola up there, they don't particularly have a problem with the neonicotinoids. If you go up to Saskatchewan or Alberta, I mean, those beekeepers they don't see any problem with the, essentially ubiquitous use of neonicotinoids on the main crop that their bees are visiting. And they're making hundreds of pounds of honey off that. So, I mean, is it a problem in canola? Based on the Canadians' experience, that's not the case. But it could be that other uses, neonicotinoids can be a real problem. I know down in Florida, in citrus, you can get some pretty bad consequences when those neonicotinoids are applied to the citrus trees. And that's a case where, I mean, yes, there is a problem. It's just that each use is different. And I guess my concern is that if we ban them altogether, just a flat out ban, then they're going to reach deeper into their bag of insecticides and going to pull out something else that is not good for bees either. And neonicotinoids, while they're toxic to bees on certain crops in certain situations, undoubtedly, they're relatively safe for us humans. They have a good safety profile for mammals, which is important. And some of the stuff that might get pulled out to replace them is not going to be as safe for the people that are growing that crop, or the people that are eating the crop and the residues that end up on it. And they're probably not going to be any better for bees either. So I guess I'm not a blanket ban. I think is a very coarse tool. I think that we should be looking at particular uses where there are real problems. The other use I would say for the neonicotinoids where we know there's a problem is in corn. As a corn seed treatment, here in Ohio, we regularly see bee kills related to corn planting, because the dust that's on those corn seeds gets kind of rubbed off during the planting process and forms this kind of insecticidal dust cloud that blows across the landscape. Bees encounter it, and you get a really reliable bee kill every year during corn planting. And that shouldn't be occurring. I mean, there's a problem there too. And I think it's focusing on these areas where people are really experiencing problems and trying to solve those problems is where we can, I think, get the most benefit without losing some of these newer chemistries that have some other real benefits from a human health perspective.
I don't have an opinion, so let me put this way. I don't have an opinion. For example, we have a system we think is safe for mammals, for the things that we are able to test. But you already also show that with the single modification or interaction with one thing, that could change the whole game. My concern is when you have this kind of thinking is, do we have control regarding the all cascade of effect that these things might have in other insects, other living things? That how can we control that? Because you're able to demonstrate with one combination of things can change. And it is what happened down, when this go to the water or reach other organisms, other insects, other living things. That's the part that I'm kind of can we control that? How we make things? How we make sure we're not hurting ourselves more than beneficiate?
I mean, I agree. We don't know a lot of that.
We don't, right?
I mean, we don't, and I mean the work to establish the safety would be just.
Are those, for example?
It's hard to do. I mean,
it is hard.
That's no excuse for not pursuing it. I guess it's the problem is we still have to grow food to eat.
True.
And we have to live our lives, and everything we do has consequences. It could be that it's not the pesticides that are in agriculture that are causing the reduction in insects. It's the agriculture itself, and just converting all that land into crop fields.
True. Fair enough.
Profound impacts on the environment. I mean, it's tough to think of anything that would have a bigger impact than turning something into a farm. I mean, or paving it over and turning it into a strip mall. I mean, we humans do all sorts of horrible things to our world. And I think pesticides are just one component of that. And I guess my hope would be that if we can use pesticides in the safest way that we can then hopefully not have to plow under as much farmland, and the land that we do have can be more productive for producing food, and we can leave more area wild, and we can continue to feed all the people on the planet. So
it is a complicated subject, I know. I just trying to get information, trying to educate myself and think together with somebody that's working with that, and